This episode of Wrestling with Entertainment is sponsored by NinjaBuzz.io. NinjaBuzz.io is a marketplace that lets advertisers and podcasters find each other in a matter of minutes. If you have a podcast or if you are considering advertising on a podcast, then go to NinjaBuzz.io and check out the platform today. It's a great day to be a podcaster.
Hey, this is Germany's best kept secret, Laurie, and you're listening to Wrestling with Entertainment.
Hello, and welcome to the show. It's Wrestling with Entertainment, bringing you the latest exclusive breaking news, previewing and reviewing the latest shows from WWE, AEW, New Japan, and everything in between every Saturday, and interviewing all your favorite wrestlers every Wednesday on YouTube and Castbox. Sponsored by Rogue Energy. Use promo code Wrestling with E for 10% off your next purchase. And this particular episode is sponsored by NinjaBuzz.io as well. I am, of course, your host, that guy, James Shea, with the leader of Squash Squad, Kaliko Yachts, and the American Scooter Dust, who are not here tonight. But who is here tonight? He is from the Grateful Yardy podcast, the Canadian sensation, Drew.
Hey friends, again with the hot tag. Man, maybe I should just jump ship and not come on this show anymore. There's always a hot tag. Man, I need to be pushed. I'm a main event superstar, damn it. I'm a main eventer.
Hey, the Forbidden Door's open. You might be a big star on that side. You're a mid-card hero.
I guess so. I am the booker, the talent of my own show, so I can put myself over here. I gotta watch my P's and Q's, if you know what I mean.
And of course, it's a great day for wrestling. Last week on the show, I interviewed Germany's best kept secret, Lori. Incredible interview with an incredible individual. Hopefully, the secret will be out now when it comes to Lori. This upcoming Wednesday, I interviewed Miss Hana, and one of our more spicy interviews. Very interesting. Definitely not one to miss, or maybe not want to hear, but it was recorded. It's coming out Wednesday, and if you don't believe me, here's a clip of it now. Your name in the match was Anna Fields. Was it Anna Fields or Anna Fields?
Oh no, it was Anna Fields. Originally, hold on. Originally, they had some name, and I feel so bad for saying this, but it just slipped out because I'm just that person. Because sometimes I don't think. and this kid, man, this writer or whatever, and I call him a kid because like I was 2016. Oh my God, I was like in my late 20s and early or mid to late 20s, and and this kid literally looked like he was like, I don't know, 22, 23, which I don't know how. But anyways, he was like one of the writers, and he, or somebody for a writer, I guess. And he said some name, and I looked at him straight in the eye, and I said, that sounds like an STD name.
Oh my God.
I straight up said, I feel so bad now. I mean, I apologize. I was like, I mean, a nice idea on the creativity. Don't get me wrong on that. It sounded like this STD name. And then he goes, that's my friend's name. And I was like, oh my gosh. Like, and I'm thinking to myself, shut up. Like, oh, and I'm just like, well, I'm going to take whatever I can take. And, that it is. I made my bed, so I'm going to lie in it. And then without, fighting it, because why fight it? It's just like getting pulled over for speeding. You know what I mean? The cop caught you. Just take your ticket and go. Don't try to hide what you did. You know what I mean? So I'm just like, oh, well, okay. And then the guy goes, how about Anna Fields? And I was like, I'll take it.
The week after that, I believe it's September 29th, we got Rob Killjoy of the Ugly Ducklings, Crash Jackson, and Megan Mason coming up in the future. So keep a lookout on when those interviews drop as well. And it really was a great week for wrestling. Last Monday, Big E won the WWE Championship off of Bobby Lashley. Drew, your thoughts?
The biggest thing I take away from Big E cashing in his Money in the Bank and becoming the WWE champion, I had to do it. I had to. Is that this guy did not have to change his character one bit. When he was split up from the New Day, when he went over to SmackDown, his character did not change. Even when he had the little tiff with The Miz on Talking Smack those back-to-back weeks, and he was saying, I'm not going to change. I'm going to be who I am and take it or leave it. Throughout his whole run leading up to becoming the WWE champion, the Big E character has stayed the same. That's what I've loved. Also, I started to look at the ages of the champions going forward on the main roster and NXT to an extent. And most of these guys and girls are aging between their mid-30s, going into their late 20s, mid-30s, because Bobby Lashley is 45 years old, and he did an amazing job carrying the brand through the pandemic, and also his historic win, also winning a Money in the he didn't win the Money in the Bank. He beat Miz. He challenged the Miz. Yep. So he did an amazing job throughout the pandemic and going into the live crowds, and had an amazing run. And I just hope that Big E going forward has a long run, but a very smartly booked run. I don't want to see his character change. I don't want to see a heel change. I think him being WWE champion and putting him on Raw back with the New Day is a smart thing to do.
Well, and it's that way right now, but the WWE draft is coming up in a couple weeks, so it could change by then. But it's like you said, he didn't have to change himself to kind of fit what the WWE was looking for in a WWE champion at this point. And to see a great guy outside of the ring and inside the ring getting his due, that's really gratifying, no?
Yes, completely. It's one of those guys that you can stick onto a morning show, you can stick onto a Nickelodeon or anything like that, and the kids will eat it up.
Family friendly.
Because yes. And if that's the direction that you're going with, it's a perfect direction. And there is a bunch of new talent that he can feud with on Raw or SmackDown, wherever they decide to put the WWE Championship.
Now, you said you hope they give him a long run with the championship. Usually, and history kind of dictates this, the Money in the Bank, when they cash in, they don't necessarily hold it for that long. Do you think that if it does come to where he's only holding it 2, maybe 3 months, that he might do something significant with that title that will keep him in that picture?
That's my fear. You hold the title and you're a transitional champion. The fear is that you'll never get back to that championship status. You'll never be back in the main event picture. That's my biggest fear. I think he's a main event talent. I think he's one of those guys, and we'll probably get into it later on in the show, but he's part of that initiative that they're doing with NXT. What NXT original plan was to cultivate talent, bring them up to the main roster to be stars. And now this is his opportunity to be a star. But my biggest fear is that you put him as a transitional champion and he drops the title to Roman or something going into the draft. It kind of waters him down as a character. It's like what happened to Kofi Kingston. He's the WWE champion. He challenges Brock Lesnar. Brock Lesnar squashes him in 3 minutes, and he didn't get a title match until almost a year later. That is my fear with Big E, that I want a title reign that makes sense. I don't care if it's 6 months. I don't care if it's until WrestleMania season next year and he drops the belt. I just want it to make sense, and I want it to be something that doesn't make him out of the main event picture going forward, even if he's on Raw or SmackDown.
Another interesting thing that happened this week, it was the first episode of NXT 2.0. The big reaction I got was big guys, big guys, big guys, squash match, big guys, funny wedding. Does that kind of sum up the 2.0 version of NXT, Drew?
I think our problem as wrestling fans is that we become too cynical to things that change. And only thing that NXT 2.0 is NXT what NXT originally became when they went to Full Sail after they tried that failed reality TV show thing that really wasn't fun for anybody. And I think they'd have scaled it back and said, okay, we're going to do a developmental, which then turned into the super indie. That's why Samoa Joe and Johnny Gargano and the list goes on and on and on got signed. Then they realized we cannot keep the same formula because then we are not harvesting the next crop of superstars to come up after the Randy Ortons and the John Cena's and the Brock Lesnar's and the list goes on and on. We can't keep calling the old guys to come back and wrestle on the main roster. We have to develop some new stars. And I think the initiative works. It's the first episode of the new initiative. And I think you got to give it a few weeks or even months to actually see exactly what the plan is. But I like what they did with the arena. I like they lightened up the arena a lot. I like the fact that you're putting in younger talent to get them over so people can see and kind of get to know them on a scale. And if it's going to be squash match after squash match, it doesn't make sense. But to build these young characters coming up that are in their 20s, like early 20s, mid 20s, that now 2, 3, 4 years down the road, when they do go to the main roster, it makes sense to see them in a main event, then I'm all for it. But right now, it's just a wait and see.
I kind of agree. It was just kind of, oh, I don't like change type thing. But honestly, it wasn't that bad. I kind of like the new setup. I mean, things have to change to some degree at some point. Um, and it wasn't a bad show, I would say. The three big takeaways. Number one, Braun Brecker. I think that's his name. Rick Steiner's son.
Yes, that I think Braun Breaker was the name.
Braun Breaker. Yeah.
Bronson Breaker or something to that extent. I hate the name.
So Braun Strowman and Bronson Reed had to get fired so we could bring in Braun Breaker.
Yeah. Honestly, you could have easily went with Rex Steiner and play up the fact that his dad and his uncle were part of the Steiner brothers. Something like those simple little things is what's gonna deter fans away from guys. If they have some type of history, play into that. Don't just give them a brand new name like what they did with a Mr. Perfect's son and giving him Michael McGillicuddy and this, that. Like he had the name. Joe Henning works.
Yeah.
So go with it. You know what I mean? And that was my biggest drawback. I didn't have a problem that they put him in a prominent role. That wasn't my problem. I was like, this name is horrible. Who in creative came up with this? And he said, yeah, let's take that name and run with it. Rex Steiner sounds 20 times better and more of a potential main event superstar that you can put on the marquee. You always have to ask yourself this question. It was like if I told you that The Rock's name in developmental was Flex Cabana, you'd be like, okay, imagine Flex Cabana versus Otto Von Freeze, WrestleMania 17, which would have been one of Stone Cold's names.
Yes.
Otto Von Freeze versus Flex Cabana. Are you interested in that match? No, you're not, because of the names. You believe that these are two jobbers that are going to be in the main event. You don't believe that they're main event talent stars. You look at names like Edge, Triple H, Shawn Michaels, Randy Orton. They exude main event. And if this is the new initiative for NXT. This is NXT Remix 2.0. We're doing it different. And the first young star that we see has a name like Breaker. Nobody's taking them seriously.
One of the things that did come out that was maybe more positive, Tommaso Ciampa is once again NXT champion. Reunited with Goldie once again. Good news by NXT.
It's the best move you could do. Do you put the title on a guy that's been in the title picture, has wrestled 4 times for the belt? That's why I was glad they took Kyle O'Reilly out of the match. Like, I was glad that because he's gotten so many shots on the old NXT, and he was part of one of the best factions in that group, on that roster at the time. And then he's gonna get another opportunity for a championship match after he fought what's his name? Finn Balor twice. He was in the 5-way. I didn't need to see him. So I was glad they inserted that young guy into the match. He looked pretty good. And it was smart to put him in that environment. But the best bet was to go with Tommaso Ciampa. He is kind of the face of NXT. He is a veteran, and it makes sense going forward. His whole Goldie and telling that story made 100%, and is the right person to put the NXT Championship on, with Samoa Joe having his injury or work injury or real injury, we don't know, but Tommaso Ciampa was the smart move.
Now, what I was kind of alluding to was we're in the 2.0 era of NXT, not Everrise and Daniel Garcia, not them. 2.0 of NXT, and the head scratch moment was putting it's 2.0. We're promoting new young talent, but then you put the championship on possibly the oldest guy in that roster. You kind of
okay, but who else does in that match? Who else do you put that belt on? Or here's what I would have suggested. This is just me
put it on LA Knight. I mean, no, he's had a pretty decent run so far, and I don't think anybody would not believe that he would be able to win the championship.
And to be honest with you, he would have been my pick to do it, because not only is he kind of a veteran, but he's a kind of a new face in NXT, in a sense. So putting the belt on him, he skyrockets. So anybody like a Carmelo Hale or anybody that they're going to be bringing in that could challenge him, they would look more credible with him being the champion, because he's got the fresh coat of paint. By putting it on Tommaso Ciampa, it's like saying, yeah, this is 2.0, but we're still hearkening to the past to keep you guys interested.
Interesting. I think the thing that was most talked about and the biggest takeaway from NXT 2.0 was that Mandy Rose changed the color of her hair. Is that if the thing that was the biggest takeaway of a new show that's 2.0, debuting new people, new look, new everything, and we're talking about Mandy Rose's hair color? Is there a problem there?
Yeah, there is a major problem. Why should I care about Mandy Rose's hair color? If Mandy Rose came out with this new hair color and she aligned herself with who she aligned herself with, and just put a beat down on everybody and said, we're the new faces of NXT 2.0. We're taking if you're going to set a trend that we are new and different, yeah, hair color is nice, but the character, just because you put a new shade of hair color on and you're still doing that glamorous kind of thing, how we're supposed to take you seriously just because you have darker hair? That didn't make sense to me. At that point, I'm like, you are introducing new stars. If you're the established star, people know who Mandy Rose is. Blonde, brunette, it doesn't matter. but you have these two young girls with you that nobody really knows. What you should have been doing was beating the hell out of Amber Rose, that she can't come back and wrestle in NXT anymore. You beat whoever you need to beat in the baby faces down completely. Then you grab a mic and cut a promo saying, "Yo, this is a darker look. We're more edgier. We're more cutthroat. Something. Just she changed her hair. Oh wow, she went from blonde to brunette." To me, it was like a whoop-de-doo moment. I could care less.
How do you think she looks with the brown hair?
She looks okay. It's fine to me. It like, to be honest with you, I've not been a fan of Mandy Rose.
No.
Ever since she had that feud with Sonya Deville, that was the best Mandy Rose that we saw, because she was invested in something. Now this is like, we just throw her back in NXT, get her some reps, put her in a group. Like, I just don't believe in the character anymore. Just because you change the hairstyle doesn't mean that I'm gonna like the character even more. Oh, she's more of a heel because she has darker hair. No.
And the next thing, the last bit of news, it is confirmed that Kenny Omega will wrestle Daniel Bryan on this week's episode of AEW Dynamite. An interesting match just to kind of throw out there. Do you think that they're pulling the trigger too soon? Do you think they kind of need this because they're running such a big venue to trying to get the people in? Or
Of course. Well, this venue is pretty much, the Arthur Ashe Stadium has been sold out, I believe. I believe it's been sold out for weeks, even before Daniel Bryan or I keep forgetting his name is not that anymore. Bryan Danielson
Yes.
is now in AEW, even before he got there. So of course they are stacking the deck because, number one, New York, as we all know historically, whose house is New York? That is Vince's house.
Yes.
So you're going into Vince's backyard. Of course, you have to put on a show that everybody wants to see, because come Thursday morning, you want to remember, there is no other wrestling on Wednesday night. It's just you. So wrestling fans are going to, the curiosity is going to be in there because, number one, you're running a tennis stadium. People are going to be interested. How is that setup going to look? That's number one.
Yes.
Then you tell us that we're putting on a main event of Kenny Omega versus Bryan Danielson, non-title. It's just to see if Daniel Bryan or Bryan Danielson can hang it with this guy. It's non-title. Of course, you're going to pop a rating. And what you should do, give them the last half an hour of that show and let them go at it. Don't care about the ratings. Don't do anything like that. But yes, they are stacking the deck because it would have been too soon if you made it title. If you said this was a championship match, that's too soon. But his first match against the arguably the guy that claims he's the best bout machine, he Mr. 7 stars, etc., etc., etc. Putting him in his first match on TV, pay-per-view as style in Vince's backyard, in the biggest place that you can have a show since the pandemic, they're smart for doing it. Tony Khan is booking very smartly. Very smartly.
All right. And that will conclude our news portion for the week. During next week, we will do a full review of AEW Dynamite in Arthur Ashe Stadium. Now a quick word from our sponsors.
Rogue Energy, the only gaming drink company in the world with 4 unique product lines to suit your task at hand, whether it be juices, shakes, smoothies, and everything else in between. Their low-calorie, no-sugar energy formula is the perfect alternative to sugar-filled canned energy drinks and sodas. Their extreme formula provides the most energy, focus, and sports performance possible. Their hydration line offers focus, ingredients without the added caffeine. Drink it anytime you're thirsty. And their shake formula is so delicious Who doesn't love a cookies and cream, 0-calorie energy milkshake? First and foremost, they've designed every Rogue product line with performance and effectiveness in mind. It is critical that you look at the nutrition panels of drinks when comparing options. There are countless off brands out there that are presenting low quality, poorly dosed formulas that amount to expensive caffeine water. Every formula they produce is designed with optimal levels of high quality ingredients. Additionally, you won't find a powdered gaming drink brand that dissolves better. No need to have chalky textures in your drink. Their taste profiles are unmatched, specifically designed for gamers, athletes, students, entrepreneurs, people with hectic schedules, individuals with low energy, podcasters who can't shut up, people who are health conscious, and so much more. Great as both a pre-workout and as a coffee energy drink replacement. Specifically designed every Rogue product line to be the best gaming drink on the planet. Rogue Energy, more focus, more wins.
Use promo code WRESTLINGWITHE for 10% off your next purchase. And we are wrestling with New Japan G1 Climax Tour 31. It got kicked off earlier today, but we're gonna kind of roll down the participants and kind of preview the upcoming matches as well. You ready, Drew?
Oh yes, oh yes, oh yes. This is my Christmas right now. This is my Christmas.
And let's go into. I could find the participants. Oh, here we go. We'll start with the participants in A block. We already kind of talked about what we think is going to happen a little bit last week, but let's go down. The first person in the A block, the winner of last year and the year before that, Kota Ibushi. Do you think Kota Ibushi has any type of shot of winning this year around, Drew?
I don't think so. I think we got a lot of booking issues in New Japan, to be honest with you. We because of the pandemic. And I don't think you want to put Kota Ibushi 3 years in a row winning the G1. No, I don't think he has a chance. To me, he'll maybe probably get to a quarterfinals or maybe even a semifinals, but winning the whole thing out of the A block or being the A block champion, I don't see it.
The next participant, I do agree with you on that. It seems like a bit much if they went 3 years in a row. 2 years, okay, I get it. They wanted to build him up, but 3 years, it might be a little much.
Because remember, just not to cut you off, but remember in 2020 when he won it in 2020, that was the whole story that it was becoming God, winning the IC belt and winning the heavyweight belt. It was him becoming God. So I understood him winning last year. Now we don't have that story. It would be more of him regaining the title because of dropping it due to whatever COVID issues or the illness that he had for a while, and he had to relinquish the belt. But I just don't see it with him for a third time. I just don't.
Do you think his recent health issues might hinder him during this month-long tournament?
If he's fully healthy, yeah, I don't see there will be a problem. But if I say this, you get a 75% Kota Ibushi, he's arguably one of the best wrestlers in the world, even at 75%. So healthy or not, I think he's gonna show out in this tournament, and especially as we run down who's in A block, I predict he's gonna have maybe a match of the year candidate in this tournament, but winning it, no.
The next participant, Tomohiro Ishii. Probably not going to win the tournament, but he's definitely going to have more than a few bangers in this tournament. No, Drew?
Yes, whenever I see him on whatever block he's in or whatever night or whatever day he's on, I have to watch his matches. Because if I don't, I end up reading the spoilers and seeing that no, recommended match to watch is an Ishii match, and he doesn't need to win the tournament. This for me in this format, this is where he shows how great of an in-ring talent he is, and no matter who he's in the ring with, there's a potential for him to have a banger and knock it out of the park every time.
And there is some pretty good potential here. I mean, and Tomohiro Ishii has been a constant in New Japan for quite some time. And it kind of seems like the only time he really gets his due and his flowers is in this tournament. Last year he was the man that denied Jay White the opportunity to go into the finals. So he has been a factor in this tournament before.
Arguably, for me, when I started watching New Japan, it was right just before Shibata had his freak injury, and Shinsuke Nakamura was still there. And when I started to tune into the G1, every time Ishii was on a card, I had to watch it, like I said before, because I just feel like this is a guy that you could put the IWGP Heavyweight Title on. I always feel like
a lot of people would debate whether or not he's tough enough to hold on to that belt.
No, and I just feel you're right what you're saying, that the only time we're giving him his flowers is in this tournament, and I think he's such more valuable to New Japan. He would be one of those that shuffling the deck chairs for a while, and even if it was him being a transitional champion, to go for him to face a Jay White, he's so believable in everything that he does, the toughness, the hard hitting, the in-ring work. He is so believable. His presentation, everything that he does is so believable that I don't see why New Japan doesn't put the rocket to this guy. Maybe it's a size thing. I don't know, but I think this is a guy that should arguably have been the IWGP Heavyweight Champion or even the IC Champion time in and time out.
It's because he doesn't talk on the mic. When he does win a main event match, he doesn't send the crowd home happy. He doesn't have a catchphrase at the end of the night. He wins his matches, he leaves, and that's as good as it gets. I mean, if there's something that needs to be said in the backstage comments, he does, but he would rather leave it unspoken and leave it in the ring. And I've always felt like that was the only thing that was really holding Tomohiro Ishii back.
You know what? I never saw it that way until you said that, but you make absolutely 100% sense, because it wouldn't be his look and it wouldn't be his work rate. It's true. He can't get on the mic and give like a 3-minute promo and thanking the crowd, and that's why maybe he hasn't won the tournament either. Because you need that. Like Okada can come out and give you a little catchphrase. Naito can do that. Even Shingo can. Zack Sabre Jr. speaks English, but with a little bit of Japanese in there. Kenta can do it. So who else is there? Evil. The Tamatanga can do it. Like there's the names I could list off that are
Khan, and he hasn't even had that many at this point.
Yes. So as a fan of Ishii, I would love to see him get more of a push, but I understand that is the one hindrance. It's not, and it wouldn't be smart to put him with like somebody that can speak for him. I think you're right with his character. He's like the wrestler's wrestler.
Yes.
So he does all of his stuff is in ring. I'm gonna come in there. I'm gonna do my stuff, and I'm gonna go home. And I think maybe that's why I enjoy the character, because it's just simple. I'm a wrestler. I do my talking in the ring, and I can understand as a company you're gonna want a guy that you can easily bring out to your morning shows or do press or the little press conference or send the crowd home happy. So yeah, Ishii could win the tournament. He always has bangers, but I understand why he will never be like a top tier guy in New Japan Pro Wrestling.
The next participant Toru Yano. And this is the guy that people always say, why the hell is he in this tournament? Why does he exist? Does he even have a chance of winning? 2 years ago, Toru Yano beat eventual winner Kota Ibushi, Tatsuya Naito, and Jon Moxley, all in the same tournament. Last year, and he almost came close to actually winning it. Not so much last year, but Toru Yano always is that dark horse of he might not win, but he will break your bracket if you choose somebody over him. But what say you, Drew?
He is like when you watch March Madness on for basketball here, the NCAA tournament. He's one of those like 11, 12 seed guys, like teams that will always bust your bracket on night one. And I think that's his role in this tournament. That it doesn't matter what block you put him in. That's his role. His role is to be the bracket breaker, and that's fine. And do I think he's winning this tournament? Hell no. Do I think he's going to bring his funny, haha, comedic side of wrestling at points? Yes. But I think we all know what Toru Yano's job is, and his job is to be the bracket buster. So you go in there, he doesn't win his first two matches. Then night three, he beats Naito. And you're like, what? That's his job. So he does an amazing job at what he does. And to be honest with you, like I said, don't see him winning the tournament. I just see him doing his usual stick and breaking the brackets as usual.
I mean, he's in, and we'll talk about him coming up. He's going to wrestle eventually Shingo Takagi. And, it wouldn't surprise me if he got the W on Shingo. I mean, and that's just, if you're saying it wouldn't surprise me if Toru Yano beat the top guy in your company, that says a lot about Toru Yano, no?
Of course it does. It's like when 1-2-3 Kid beat Razor Ramon,
yes.
Or when the Hurricane beat The Rock. You don't expect it to happen, but because you position the main event guys as kind of untouchables, and Toru Yano is like a jobber. So when the jobber beats the main event guy, it means something. Like, oh my gosh, he was on that night. So yeah, if he beats a Shingo, and then that's something where Shingo needed the points to move on, and Toru Yano beats him the last night or whatever night they're wrestling each other, and oh my gosh, Shingo now doesn't go to the semifinals, or he doesn't go to the A block finals because of Toru Yano, it means something. That's what a lot of wrestling fans have been saying over the last few years. The titles need to mean something. When I climb the ladder for the briefcase, it has to mean something. When I win the G1 tournament, it has to mean something. So yeah, Toru Yano beating a Shingo or a Sabre Jr. or a Kenta means something because he's like a lower mid-card guy. So him beating a mid-carder or even a main eventer, that means something. So then it gives that tournament legitimacy going forward.
And we talked about that. Ishii is probably going to have a couple of bangers in there. That are probably going to go 20-minute plus. Toru Yano matches only go maybe 5 minutes, if that. So it's kind of a fresh air as well.
Yeah.
That brings us to the IWGP World Heavyweight Champion, the Dragon, Shingo Takagi. This is his third G1. He did decently in his last two, but he wasn't champion then. How do you see him faring this time around?
Just looking at who's in A block, and like last time we spoke about the tournament going into it, I just, to be honest with you, My question is, does he really need it? You know what I mean?
The champion never needs to win the G1.
Like it's like going to North America and saying like, oh, Brock Lesnar's in the Royal Rumble. Does he really need to win the Royal Rumble as the champion? Unless it's his belt is on the line, I could understand that. But I don't think Shingo needs to win this tournament unless you're trying to tell the story that at one of the nights of Wrestle Kingdom, our good friend Will Ospreay, the real world champion as he claims himself, faces Shingo as the winner of the G1, and they unify that belt. That's a possibility. But to be honest with you, I think Shingo's gonna have some decent matches in this tournament. Maybe a couple bangers with Ibushi and Ishii and Zack Sabre Jr. But to be honest with you, I don't see him winning the full tournament coming up, or even maybe being in the A block final, but not winning the whole thing.
Well, the one thing that's always interesting in the G1 is when the champion does lose a match in the G1, it sets up maybe his next 2, maybe 3 title defenses before leading up to Wrestle Kingdom. So out of everybody that's in this tournament so far, who do you see maybe getting that W on Shingo to have a main event title shot against him down the line?
Maybe Kenta, maybe a Naito, maybe a Jeff Cobb. Sonata is another name.
Cobb and Sonata are in B block.
B block, sorry.
Yeah.
So out of A block, Ibushi, Naito, Ishii, Sabre Jr., maybe one of Tangaloa, Kenta, Great Khan. So yeah, I see many names coming out of there that could be his next 3 challengers before we get into 2022. And you're right that usually if the champion's in the tournament, it usually sets up his next 3 to 4 guys that he has to face before he gets to Wrestle Kingdom. So any of those names that I mentioned could be his next group of challengers coming forward.
The name that I'm looking at is Great Khan at this point. I think that beating Shingo would definitely kind of legitimize him to a degree that he could really use. Obviously winning the championship is not in the cards for him right now, but it would definitely bring him up. Selflessly, I kind of want to see Tangaloa get a W on him. Kind of go into a little singles run, but odds are they're not going to do that. That brings us to Shingo's Lij stablemate, Tetsuya Naito. Naito mentioned that he won the tournament in 2013, 2016, and he will win it in 2021. He's the Olympic man, so to speak, every 4 years. Do you see that being the case, or do you think that Naito might be taking a backseat this year?
I think Naito's taking a backseat this year, to be honest with you. Obviously, we know what he can do. We know he is an amazing talent, but I think this year we got other guys in this A block that need to be kind of pushed forward. We've seen Naito on top. I'm glad to see him tagging and all that kind of stuff when you do tune into New Japan, but going forward, I don't think he needs to be in the finals. I don't think he needs to do anything like that. To be honest with you, he could have one of those bad showings where he's like just above Toriano, to be honest with you. I would be fine with that.
Kaliko always says Naito's in that position where he's kind of higher than the company itself. People will forgive him if he doesn't win because they love him so much. He's the Hulk Hogan of the company. I don't see him having the worst showing, but I see him getting him either. I see him just missing the A block finals, depending on who he wrestles in the finals, which we'll get to when we get there. Um, Next guy in the tournament, Zack Sabre Jr., ZSJ. Um, Definitely one of the more interesting names that's always came out of the G1 just because of his style. But he's doing more tag team things than singles as of right now. So do you see that affecting his G1 performance this year?
No, I don't think it's going to affect his performance. I just think his focus is going to be more on the tag team. Yeah, he'll have a decent showing in the tournament like he always does, and like you were saying, his style it fits this tournament well. But I just don't see him being one of those top four out of the A block. To be honest with you, I see him more focusing on his tag team stuff and just having a great showing in the G1 tournament.
The Great Old Khan. He actually debuted on the last night of last year's G1. So this is really our first kind of preview of what he can actually do in this tournament against um nine of the best wrestlers in the world. So do you see that him stepping up and kind of showing that he could he could hang with these guys, or do you see that kind of just finishing him at the brim of it, kind of not quite there? You can
Honestly, I
understand what I
think
mean?
yeah, I follow you. I think this for the Great Okan is his coming out party. I think this is where he can really, really show what he has to offer to New Japan and the New Japan audience. So, do I see him going to to the finals of A block? No, but I think this is where we actually get to see who the real Okan really is when it comes to facing the top talent in the world in the G1 Climax tournament.
And like I said, I see that if he doesn't do maybe fantastic things in this tournament, I see him at least getting a win over Shingo Takagi. That brings us to our next participant, Kenta. What do you see Kenta doing in this tournament?
I'm gonna have to second my thoughts with the Great Okan. I also think Kenta needs some type of showing out. To be honest with you, since he's returned to New Japan, it's like he's been hot and cold, and I think maybe his little one match in AEW kind of cooled him off a little bit. To be honest with you, and I think this tournament will kind of heat him back up. So if he decides to come back to North America and step through the forbidden door, it kind of helps. So this tournament would be another guy that needs to show out and show us what he really can do, even though we kind of know what he can do because he's arguably one of the most influential wrestlers of his generation. But I just think he needs this tournament. He needs to put a little bit more shine on himself to make himself look like a main event superstar.
And I'm I'll get to what my thoughts are on Kenta when we get there, but um, you're absolutely right. He was doing maybe some great things last year in the G1, and with that briefcase being more of a champion with no championship than John Moxley was with a championship. Um, and it kind of just when he jobbed, essentially jobbing to John Moxley, it kind of made him cold after that, and there wasn't a lot for him to do. But I think you're right. I think he might be doing some great things in this tournament. Um, a surprise of this tournament, Tangaloa. Um, Tangaloa hasn't had a whole lot of singles matches in New Japan as a whole. His whole long way being there. Now he's gonna have 9. What do you see Tangaloa doing?
Another guy that's gonna remember. I remember speaking to you guys earlier this year, and I was talking about New Japan needing to shuffle the deck chairs a little bit because, like I said, the same guys have been on top. So if Tangaloa has a decent showing as a singles wrestler, I'm not saying you break up the Gorillas of Destiny at any time or any point. This kind of reminds me of when you watch Ring of Honor, when Jay Briscoe and Mark Briscoe kind of go off and do a singles thing, even though they are the Briscoe brothers. I think this is where Tangaloa can actually show that he is a credible singles wrestler and can actually go after. I'm not saying he's going to be the next IWGP champion, but there's the Never Open Weight Championship he can go for. There's also the US title he could go for. So again, this is another guy that you need to heat up and need to protect coming out of this tournament to make him look like he's another superstar in the making for New Japan.
I do hope that's the case. Rather than him just kind of maybe being jobbed out. You know what I mean?
Totally. That was my other side of it would be like you could easily put him in the Toriano situation that you job him all. He ends up winning like 2 out of the 9 matches. He's not ready for the single spot. You could do it that way as well, but I just think we need some new faces on top of New Japan. We can't keep going back to the well with Ibushi and Naito and Tanahashi and Okada. We can't be just shifting those guys around. We got to start building some new guys that people can get behind. And to me, the Gorillas of Destiny are one of those tag teams that are very, very, very over. They are very flamboyant. They're very in your face. But now to showcase them in a singles role, both of them, because one's in A, one's in B, this is the time where you can actually say, yeah, they are arguably the best tag team we have in New Japan, but they can also go as singles wrestlers. So this would be the best time to heat up these guys. So going forward, they look like $1 million coming out of this tournament. Even if you don't win the tournament, just looking halfway decent within it, having a winning record or anything like that makes you look credible. So it's like, okay, so if he decides, hey, I'm coming back to America and I'm going to go on AEW or I'm going to go on New Japan Strong and I'm going to try to get that New Japan Strong title, he looks credible by using this tournament.
And the last guy in the tournament, Yajiro. Let's do one of Kaliko's favorite things. What's your favorite fruit, Drew?
Squash.
Yep. So, all that being said, we got 10 guys here. Who wins the A block?
Winner of the A block is going to be, I'm going to say, Shingo Takagi.
I am going with Kenta.
Okay.
If you're going to pull the trigger on Kenta, I feel like now would kind of be that time. And I kind of feel if Jay White was going to be in this tournament, you could make the argument that he might win his block. He's not. We're gonna be talking about Evil in a moment. He's kind of doing his own thing. So Kenta being the sole legitimate pick for a Bullet Club to actually do something in this tournament, I see that might be the case. So let's get into B Block. First out, he's the IWGP United States Champion, Hiroshi Tanahashi. What do you think Tanahashi's going to do in his 21st G1 Climax?
I don't want to use the word squash, but to be honest with you, I could care less about Tanahashi. To be honest with you, I don't think he is what Ric Flair is to North American wrestling. Like, yeah, you're great. Yeah, you're good in the ring. Yeah, you can be on top, but it becomes overdone. So I just think he's going to do his regular thing, have a decent record, and maybe make it to the block final. But other than that, I could care less about Tanahashi.
Now we talked at length about this guy last week on the show, Kazuchika Okada. We talked about if this being his redemption story and how this winning this G1 could kind of propel him back to being the Rainmaker. If that doesn't happen, where do you see Okada going?
Honestly, I'm looking at it like this. If this forbidden door, it's this darn COVID. COVID has screwed up everything for everybody. Because I'm looking at it, if this forbidden door is legitly open, Okada has accomplished pretty much everything he can in New Japan. I'm not saying he leaves New Japan, right?
Yep.
I'm saying this is a guy that could easily one night show up on an AEW Dynamite or AEW Rampage, and all he has to do, his music plays, and if Kenny Omega is still the champ, or it's Bryan Danielson or whoever the champ is, Darby Allin, etc., and all he has to do is point, and that's it. That's just my creative booking 101 in my head. But to speak about the tournament, I really think the story they're trying to tell is him getting back to being the Rainmaker, the guy that was the anchor and the face of New Japan Pro Wrestling for the last few years. So I think he goes to the block final. That's my prediction right now. I think he goes to the block final, and honestly, I think he wins the B block. But other than that, he's gonna do what he does, and I think the story, like we were talking about on the last episode that we chatted, is that it is his redemption, because he's fallen totally off of the map of New Japan. And I think this tournament, like we were talking about those other guys that are in the A block, that could heat them up. I think Okada is one of those guys that need a little bit more heating up, and in the B block, his story is the best story to tell to get the tournament over by using Okada.
I couldn't agree more. Another guy in this tournament, Hiroki Goto. Probably somebody that's not gonna win the tournament, but Goto has had some low-key bangers in the G1. Maybe not as talked about as the Ishii ones, but he does put on a great performance every year.
That's what I honestly see that going forward. I honestly see that for him. He's in that same Ishii role that you're going to get some bangers out of him. He doesn't have to win the tournament, and he's going to make other guys look like $1 million coming out of it. So he's the B block version of what Ishii is to the A block.
Next up, Yoshihashi. What are your thoughts on Yoshihashi, Drew?
I gotta use the words of my good friend Kaliko. Fuck Yoshihashi.
Could agree more. Last year's finalist with Kota Ibushi, Sonata. Sonata had some heat on him last year, and it kind of got him to the finals. Do you see him kind of carrying that momentum, or do you think it's going to cool off at this point?
I think he carries the momentum into this year's tournament, like last year. It's like what we were saying about Mr. Ibushi, like him winning back-to-back years. I don't think Sonata's going to win it, but I think Sonata's another guy that's in this tournament that will give you bangers as usual. And to me, have him maybe even making the block final, to be honest with you.
I was just going to say that myself. I could see it coming down between Okada and Sonata, and just one little key factor kept them away from each other that separated Sonata from Okada. A dark horse, nonetheless, Taichi. He had a decent showing last year. He even beat Minoru Suzuki, had one of the most talked about matches in the G1 with Kota Ibushi, where they kicked each other 80 times in a row. But do you think that singles momentum has kind of drifted off and he's just a tag team guy now?
I just think he is a body because we couldn't get a lot of the foreigners in due to COVID. I just think he's a body. I think you just throw him in there because arguably, we all know if there was no COVID, you would see Jay White, you would have seen Will Ospreay in it. It's just, for me, it's just Taichi's just a body to be thrown in there. We need to fill out the two blocks, and I just look at him. He could be one of those guys that get driven down the line that are just floundering around in the tournament.
An interesting name in this tournament, Tama Tonga. He's had some low-key interesting matches. He had the one G1 I saw him in, he did pretty decently, and the two. Maybe not a guy that is going to win the G1, but definitely a guy that's going to store it up. And he might actually be the Toru Yano of the B block, in my opinion. Do you see that happening, or do you see him just being maybe another body to fill out the block?
I see what you're saying. I totally agree with what you're saying, that he is the Toru Yano. He'll be the block breaker, like bracket breaker. I really see that. I don't see he's just a body, and I'm not trying to discredit anybody that's in this tournament, because to me it's arguably the best pro wrestling tournament that we have.
Oh yeah. I
just think I think he's gonna get over more than a Taichi would, to be honest with you. And I like the fact that you said he's like the Toru Yano of the B block. I totally see the same thing.
Now we got the head of the House of Pancakes. No, Torture. Yeah, Torture. Evil, which is a new kind of branch off of Bullet Club. It seems like Evil won the championship from Naito. He dropped the belt to Naito, and he hasn't done much since. Do you think that this is going to be where Evil kind of gets back on top? We see the House of Torture become its own faction? Or is this just another floundering performance for a guy that should have been in Bullet Club to begin with?
Your third point. That's exactly how I felt about him when he turned. I'm like, I do not believe you as a main eventer. You haven't given me anything as a main eventer. They threw you in the most over faction in the history of factions, because honestly, the Bullet Club has transcended 3 organizations across the globe in some way, shape, or form. You got guys from the Bullet Club in WWE. You got guys in the Bullet Club that pretty much started AEW, and then guys still in the Bullet Club over in New Japan. I just think he's a... Sorry?
Impact as well.
and Impact as well. I just think he's a floundering guy, and then giving him a new faction and pretty much calling it the International House of Pancakes. It's just I think this is the time where you cut your losses. You tried with Evil, and it just didn't work.
And I just made the joke House of Pancakes, but when I said House of Terror and not House of Torture, that was a legitimate slip up.
You can tell it's not really important, like how I feel about Evil. And to my point, also, I just feel he's another body in there. Just throw him in there, because we don't have who we want to have in the tournament, so we'll just throw him in there. We know he'll do decent stuff, but I just don't. I think they put the rocket on him a little too soon, and expected him to carry New Japan, and he wasn't, and his shoulders weren't ready for it.
Next guy in the tournament, Jeff Cobb. This isn't his first time in the tournament, and he didn't do necessarily great last year. But it seems like they're kind of giving Cobb that little rub, that little push. Do you see him actually doing well, that we could maybe see him in the main event picture? Or do you see that they'll treat him the same like they have in this tournament prior to him joining United Empire?
I think this is his coming out party. I really believe this is where we'll actually see the true Jeff Cobb, that he can be a main event player in New Japan. I really think he's my dark horse in Block B. To me, he would be the guy that surprises everybody and could even roll right into the B Block final, to be honest with you. He is my dark horse. I just think this is the time where, without having Ospreay there, this is the time for him to show that he's a main event status guy.
I do agree with you. I see that Sonata might be the guy that causes Jeff Cobb that that B Block finals, and maybe start something between Sonata and Cobb. Obviously, he came off a big win against Okada. I don't see him beating Okada in the G1, especially if Okada wins the whole shebang. But we'll see. We will definitely see what happens with Jeff Cobb. Maybe a warm body, maybe a cold body, maybe just a body in general. Chase Owens.
Yeah, he's a body. He's just thrown in there. I don't see a problem with it. I see he's a young guy. He's probably the jobber of B Block. He'll probably get a sneaky win here and there, maybe over Evil, maybe over a Tamatanga. But to me, he's just a body.
Let me ask you this: who wins? Chase Owens or Yoshihashi?
Chase Owens.
Interesting. And let's. Night one was earlier today, so that's already in the history books. But by the time we record this, night two will be completely done as well. But let's kind of review it anyway. Preview it. Block B, the first match or last match, main event, whatever you want to call it, is Hiroshi Tanahashi versus Okada. This is the second time they. Actually, no, wait. Who wins the B block?
Oh, who wins the B Block? I'm saying Okada wins the B Block.
I agree. So you got Shingo winning the A block, Okada winning the B block. Who wins the whole shebang?
For me, it's Okada wins the whole thing. I like the story. I'm a story guy. I'm a storylines guy. So I like the story. It's the redemption of Okada and him now winning the briefcase, and now he can strut his stuff going into Wrestle Kingdom, where we can get all the pageantry, and he can come out as the Rainmaker and become again the IWGP Heavyweight Champion. And then hopefully COVID slows down for the damn world, and we can actually get the damn dream matches that we want to see on North American soil.
I have Kenta winning A block, and I have Okada winning B block, and I have Kenta winning the whole thing.
All I'm saying is don't hold me to it. Don't hold me to who, because this is the thing with the G1. You can watch day 1, day 2, by day 5, you're like, okay, throw everything out the window. Just don't lock me in as my choices, because to be honest with you, I have this feeling that I'm going to be totally off on who wins this whole thing.
Well, we're kind of on the same page with Okada, so I've correctly predicted the finals like the last 2 years. I haven't predicted the winner, but I have predicted the finals. So we're not too far off. So with our picks, but if you're not locking it in, I won't hold you to it.
Thank you very much.
We are on night 2, block B action. Tanahashi versus Okada. Who wins?
I'm going to say Okada wins there.
Couldn't agree more. Hiroki Goto versus Taichi.
I'm going to have to say Taichi there.
I agree. Sonata versus Tama Tonga.
That's Sonata wins that one.
Yes. Cobb versus Chase Owens.
I'll say Jeff Cobb.
Yoshihashi versus Evil.
Evil.
Fuck Yoshihashi. And that will be the night 2, so we'll see what happens. Well, you already know what happens, because this is coming out after that it airs. But something that didn't air yet, September 23rd, it's A block action once again. Toriano versus Great Okan. Who wins?
Great Okan.
I agree. Kenta versus Yujiro.
Kenta.
Naito versus Tonga Loa.
I'm gonna go with an upset here. I think Tonga Loa gets the upset.
You know, I was looking at that as well. If Tonga Loa is not going to win literally any other match in the tournament, I feel like this would be the one that he might actually pull off. Kota Ibushi versus Tomohiro Ishii.
Yeah, that's going to be a recommended match, to be honest with you. But I'm gonna give the edge to Ibushi on that one.
Agreed. And the main event of that night, Shingo Takagi versus Zack Sabre Jr.
And I'm gonna say Takagi wins that, and that probably be another recommended match to watch.
I agree as well. And you know, there's only one more night before this before we have to record the next episode. So let's reread that one as well.
All right.
September 24th, we got B block action again. Tanahashi versus Goto.
Tanahashi wins that one.
Tama Tonga versus Chase Owens.
Tama Tonga.
Yoshihashi versus Jeff Cobb.
Jeff Cobb.
Fuck Yoshihashi. Sonata versus Taichi.
Sonata.
Okada versus Evil.
I like throwing a little upset in there, so I'm gonna say Evil goes over on that one, because Okada has to falter a little bit in the tournament, so I think Evil picks up the win there.
And if he does win the tournament, he's going to have to defend it at least once. And you know, Evil is the king of opportunities. So I see that could happen. All right. And that will conclude our coverage of the G1 New Japan Pro Wrestling G1 Climax 31, Max to Max. Thank you so much for coming on and doing this with me once again, Drew.
Hey, no problem, man. It's always a good time to talk about great things in the world of Poro Resu. A little bit of Japanese there for you.
And show off. And once again, where can we find Drew on your show and on social media as well?
All right, let's start with the Grateful Yardie podcast. It's available on Anchor.fm, Apple Podcasts, Podcast Addict, Spotify, and wherever else you get your favorite podcasts. For me, your boy Drew, you can find me on Instagram. That is Drew_Wrestling99, and on Twitter, DWrestling99.
And of course, if you like what we're doing, please like, subscribe, comment, vote on YouTube and Castbox. This episode was sponsored by Rogue Energy. Use promo code WrestlingWithE for 10% off your next purchase. And specifically, this episode was sponsored by NinjaBuzz.io, connecting podcasters with advertisers. Give them a look. And you could even find the website in the description of the video below as well. Join us this Wednesday as we interview Miss Hana. And if you want to find us on social media, we are at Wrestling with E, both on Twitter and Instagram for all your Wrestling with entertainment news, interviews, and everything else. You can follow me individually at JamesJ993. You can find Kaliko at I am Kaliko, Scooter at Scooter Dust, and yeah, that will do it for this week. For our special guest, Drew, Kaliko Yacht, Scooter Dust, and James Shea, and this has been Wrestling with Entertainment.
Hey folks, this is the Colossal Mike Law, and you are listening to Wrestling with Entertainment. Enjoy the show, support these guys. We appreciate it very much. We'll see you at ringside.